We are enduring times filled with a multitude of challenges, any one of which would be the single most intense challenge in normal times. Judaism guides us to respond to our challenges by coming together in mutual support and by asking how our texts and values can shine a light on our path. We have recently received several pieces of intense news that particularly impact us, our brothers, sisters, and kin in the modern Jewish homeland, and our neighbors, the Palestinians, with whom we share the human family. As we gather for Shabbat, we would be remiss not to note these developments, just as we noted the news of the murder of the Bibas children and their mother in Hamas captivity, the agreement on a hostage release and ceasefire deal, and others. One of these difficult recent pieces of news is that Hamdan Ballal, one of the co-directors of the Oscar-winning documentary No Other Land, was beaten and wounded in an attack by Jewish extremists in his hometown, Susia, in the West Bank. Ballal was then arrested, and Israeli soldiers beat him again before ultimately releasing him. Another of these difficult pieces of news is that about 2 months after the hostage release and ceasefire agreement, and nearly a year and a half since Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7th, the remaining Israeli hostages still have not come home, and hostilities in Gaza have resumed. We may have differing opinions on Israel's policies. At the same time, in an ideal situation, the war would be over by now, and the hostages would be safely home. I acknowledge that for each of us, there may be one or another pieces of this Devar Torah that may not be the easiest to hear. For me as well, none of this is the easiest to talk about. And if you would like to talk about any of these issues more, I am more than happy to meet with you now and always. We do not choose the times we live in. We can only choose how to respond to them. And it is my prayer that Judaism may bolster us all in responding to our times with dialogue and understanding, rooted deeply in Jewish texts and tradition, and together in community and love. The film No Other Land, to quote the Times of Israel, a centrist Israeli publication, chronicles Israel's demolitions, Palestinian resistance to evacuation orders, and violent attacks by Israeli settlers in the Palestinian West Bank village of Masafer Yatta, where the army expropriated some 11.5 square miles for army use. Here is what happened to co-director Hamdan Ballal, again from the Times of Israel. Basel Adar, another Palestinian co-director, said around 24 settlers, some masked, some carrying guns, some in Israeli uniform, attacked the village. We came back from the Oscars, and every day since there is an attack on us, Adar said. Ballal told his lawyer, Leah Tzemel, that he had been filming damage caused by settlers who threw stones at his house when a settler arrived with 2 soldiers. Ballal's wife heard her husband being beaten outside and scream, "I'm dying," according to Adar, the other co-director. Yuval Avraham, one of the film's Israeli directors, posted on X, "They beat him and he has injuries in his head and stomach, bleeding." Adar then saw the soldiers lead Ballal, handcuffed and blindfolded, from his home into a military vehicle. Ballal also said he and the other 2 Palestinians arrested spent the entire night outside, blindfolded, and that he was beaten by soldiers again. From the New York Times, there were disputes about what precisely had unfolded, as there often are. The police said that Ballal was questioned, along with 2 other Palestinians, on suspicion of hurling stones, property damage, and endangering regional security. All 3 deny the accusations, their lawyer said. The episode drew attention to rising attacks against Palestinians in the West Bank. During the past year, Jewish extremists have thrown rocks at Palestinians, set cars on fire, and defaced homes. A vast majority of police investigations into attacks by Israelis on Palestinians are closed without charges, according to Yesh Din, an Israeli rights group. This incident comes while here in the US, authorities have detained and attempted to deport Mahmoud Khalil. Khalil has not been charged with any crime. Rather, he was one of the student protest leaders at Columbia University's demonstrations against Israel's actions in Gaza. Many will find Khalil's opinions, particularly those in support of Hamas, to be abhorrent and painful. At the same time, there is not evidence that Khalil committed violence or channeled arms or funds to Hamas. What guidance do Jewish texts and values give us for how to respond to these events? Let us begin with the guidance that Israeli texts and values give us. The best of the Israeli textual tradition is, in its way, a continuation of the Tanakh, the full Hebrew Bible, including the prophets and the writings. Picking up where the Tanakh left off 2 millennia ago, Israeli thought inherits Judaism's canon, particularly Judaism's ethics for how to use power, as developed in ancient Israel, and channels these for our times. I would like to share together in passages from the final speech of Prime Minister Yitzchak Rabin and from the Nobel Peace Prize speech of Prime Minister Menachem Begin, among the most classic leaders of the Israeli left and the Israeli right. Rabin, in his final speech at a Tel Aviv rally in 1995, began by saying that to the extent there is a way to move forward, we must take advantage of it for the sake of those standing here and for those who are not here. Rabin was paraphrasing Moses, channeling Moses' expansive sense of who is included in our responsibilities when Moses says to the people, I make this covenant with those who are standing here with us this day and with those who are not here with us this day, in Deuteronomy. Then Rabin said the following words. I will read them first in English and then chant Rabin's modern Hebrew with Haftarah trop. Violence erodes the basis of Israeli democracy. We must denounce it, condemn it, and isolate it. This is not the way of the state of Israel. In a democracy, there can be differences of opinion, machlokot, but decisions must be made through democratic elections. Alimut hi kirsum yesod ha-demokratia ha-Yisraelit yesh liknot ota lehokia ota levoder ota Zulo darka shel medinat Yisrael b'demokratia yecholot lihiyot machlokot ha'achra'a tihiyeh b'bechirot demokratiyot. Part of what made Rabin's words so potent is that he said them as a highly decorated soldier. He had served as the IDF chief of staff during the Six-Day War, among other roles. Precisely as someone who used force when ein breira, there is no alternative. Rabin condemned violence when there is an alternative. Rabin acknowledged there will always be differences of opinion, machlokot, yet he affirmed that we must make decisions through democratic means. Rabin particularly decried vigilantism. In 1994, after Jewish extremist Baruch Goldstein killed 29 Palestinians who were praying at the Cave of the Patriarchs, a holy site for both our faiths, Rabin said of Goldstein, "Sensible Judaism spits you out. You placed yourself outside the wall of Jewish law. You are a shame on Zionism and an embarrassment to Judaism." Rabin carried traditional Jewish law into the modern Jewish commonwealth by affirming that when it comes to vigilante violence, this is not the way of the state of Israel. Zulo darka, the way of, as in derech, way or path, shel medinat Yisrael. We find a similar ethic in the words of Menachem Begin. In his Nobel Peace Prize speech in 1978, Begin began by quoting the prophet Isaiah, "And they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." Begin said, "We mortals ask ourselves, when is this vision going to become reality?" As if in answer to this question, a practical how-to guide to fulfilling the prophecy of Isaiah, Begin told the story of hosting Egyptian President Anwar Sadat in Jerusalem. He gave the speech in English, so I do not have a Hebrew text to use, but I would like to use Haftarah trop to chant Begin's English. "We knew and learned that we have different sets of opinion, but whenever we recall those days of Jerusalem, we say always that they were shining, beautiful days of friendliness and understanding. We gave to each other the most momentous pledge. No more war, no more bloodshed." When Begin said friendliness and understanding, he was not talking about his fellow members of the Israeli right or even fellow Jews. Begin was talking about the president of Egypt, the nation that had invaded Israel on Yom Kippur. And in spite of their differences of opinion, in fact, precisely as a response to these differences, Begin and Sadat committed to understanding each other and treating each other as friends. Both Rabin and Begin's lives were profoundly marked by extremist violence. Rabin was assassinated by a fellow Jew just after he spoke those words. Begin's peace partner, Anwar Sadat, was assassinated by Muslim extremists. Extremists are capable of exploiting and misusing any religion, indeed any human ideology, including secular ones, as we know from Stalin and Pol Pot. The Jewish ethical tradition calls us to reject this tendency in the human condition and to treat each human being as one created in the image of God, B'Tselem Elohim. Both Rabin and Begin acknowledged differences of opinion. In Hebrew, Rabin called them machlokot, literally disputes, a word with deep resonance in the Jewish canon. The Talmudic rabbis developed the concept of a dispute for the sake of heaven, machloket l'shem shamayim, or, loosely translated, differences of opinion for the sake of all that is vaster than we are, greater truth, understanding, justice, and love. Pirkei Avot, chapters of the ancestors in the Talmud, offers us this teaching, which we read to open each of Beth Shalom's conversation sessions about the war this past January. Every dispute that is for the sake of heaven, its end will endure, and one that is not for the sake of heaven, its end will not endure. What is a dispute for the sake of heaven? Such was the dispute of Hillel and Shammai, two rabbis who shared a dialogue, though with diametrically opposing views. And one that is not for the sake of heaven? Such was the dispute of Korach and all his band, who challenged Moses and Aaron simply to gain power for themselves. For the Talmudic rabbis, what determined membership in the dialogue was not how much one party agreed or disagreed with another's views. That was something to share within the dialogue. The only grounds for barring someone from the dialogue were if that party sought to take over the whole dialogue for themselves, for self-aggrandizing purposes, like Korach when he rebelled against Moses. As long as one is arguing on the basis of seeking greater understanding and justice, they are part of the shared machloket. The Talmud is replete with emotional stories about the rabbis' lives that show that machloket l'shem shamayim is sometimes far easier said than done. Yet the Talmud preserves the archetypes of Hillel and Shammai as a reminder of what is possible and a call for us to pursue this model in every generation, from Hillel and Shammai to Begin and Sadat. We find another echo of the machloket l'shem shamayim in the thought of the great Israeli novelist and essayist Amos Oz, who wrote, "No idea has ever been defeated by force. To defeat an idea, you have to offer a better idea." This call that comes through the generations can guide us in our moment. At the same time as these events, the remaining Israeli hostages are still not home. 59 hostages are still being held in Gaza. 35 of these hostages are dead. 24 are believed still to be alive. A week from this Monday, we will reach the 1.5-year anniversary of Hamas's attack on October 7th. And still, these Israeli families cannot reunite with their loved ones. The families of the hostages who have died cannot even know the modicum of closure that comes from burying a loved one. This past week, I attended the annual convention of the CCAR, the Union of Reform Rabbis, in Chicago. One of our fellow attendees was Rabbi Yael Vorgan, who serves 10 kibbutzim in the Sha'ar HaNegev region near Gaza. Rabbi Yael told the convention about her 3 congregants who are being held hostage. Twins Gali and Ziv Berman from Kfar Aza, who were abducted at 26 years old and are now 27. And Omri Miram from Nachal Oz, who was abducted at 46 and is now 47. Rabbi Yael told us that Omri has 2 little children who ask 3 times a day, as regularly as traditional prayer, when will they bring back Abba from Gaza? During the convention, we had a prayer service led by some of our Israeli Reform rabbinic colleagues. One song leader, Lenore Angedi, led us in an original piyut, spiritual song, called Anenu, Answer Us, Bring Them Home, in which she sang, "Don't let us burn alone. Don't let us burn further on and on. See our bodies, minds, and souls. Don't let us burn alone. Bring them home." She sang with such depth of emotion that when she finished, the room burst into applause. Then we heard a talk from Rabbi Michael Marmer of Hebrew Union College's Jerusalem campus. He said, "I have an anxiety that we are losing our empathy, that to think of the tens of thousands of innocent Palestinians who have lost their lives and the many more who have lost their homes, even to think of them is somehow suspect." Again, the room burst into applause. These parallel applauses for Lenore Angedi's song and for Michael Marmer's words exemplify Judaism's ultimate call for how to respond to times like these, with empathy both for ourselves and for others. It is possible both to say Israel needs to be able to keep Israelis safe and to empathize with those Palestinians who suffer from Israel's actions. It is possible both to believe one Israeli action is justified as self-defense, or the comparatively better choice given no good choices, and to oppose a different Israeli action on the grounds of how much Palestinian suffering it would cause, as one might feel about any government's actions. As an example, 69% of Israelis support implementing the ceasefire and hostage release deal, including 54% of Israelis who voted for the current administration. It is possible to empathize with people who have lost loved ones on both sides, and to support working for diplomatic progress towards safety, justice, and peace for both sides, though it is complex and will not happen overnight. How exactly we navigate these questions may look different for each of us, and that is part of the machloket l'shem shamayim, the dispute for the sake of heaven. And it is possible both to disagree with someone strenuously and to respect their right to be safe. We see this dual empathy in Rabbi David Saperstein, the legendary longtime, now emeritus head of the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, in his prepared remarks for testifying before the Senate yesterday. He wrote that he is deeply opposed to Mahmoud Khalil's views. Then added, "The administration is rounding up people with no evidence of crimes. Anti-Semitism thrives in authoritarian environments where civil liberties are curtailed, not in spaces of robust, protected democratic discourse." Saperstein highlights that when we protect others' places in the public square, even those whose opinions one may deeply oppose, we protect our place too, and vice versa. And we see this dual empathy in the Talmudic sage Hillel, the same Hillel who upheld the machloket l'shem shamayim. "If I am not for myself, who will be for me? But when I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when?" Either of the first two phrases by itself would be a platitude. What makes Hillel's statement profound is his ability to combine both into one thought, one feeling, and, as the third phrase makes clear, one course of action. This Shabbat is Shabbat HaChodesh, the Shabbat before the first of the month of Nisan, the month when we celebrate Pesach, Passover. In the morning, we will chant the additional reading for this Shabbat. The moment when God speaks to Moses emphasizes the special nature of this month, HaChodesh, and gives the children of Israel their new calendar. Why give the people their calendar while they are still enslaved in Egypt? God gives it now as a sign that the children of Israel will get out of Egypt and reach freedom. And when they do, they will be able to use their own calendar. The calendar is a down payment from God on better times. It is proof that reaching better times is possible. As this moment was a sign of hope for our ancestors, may it be a sign of hope for us. May we come closer to better times through dialogue, understanding, and indeed, machloket l'shem shamayim, differences of opinion for the sake of all that is vaster than we are. May we make our contribution, however small, to attaining greater justice, understanding, and truth. And may we make this moment better through sharing in community and showing each other togetherness and love. Shabbat Shalom. In this spirit, let's sing together one more time the song with which we started our service tonight, the words of the great mystic Rabbi Nachman of Breslov: "If you believe that we can damage, believe we can repair." If you believe that we can damage, ta'amin, believe we can repair, letzaken. If you believe that we can damage, ta'amin, believe we can repair, letzaken. Nine, 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 nine. If you believe that we can damage, ta'amin, believe we can repair, let's talk. And one more time, if you believe that we can damage, ta'amin, believe we can repair, let's talk. Let's all take a deep breath together. Let's take one more. And what a blessing it is to take deep breaths.